Alright, so version 1.05 is finally out and we can now enjoy our beautiful Kerbal Space Program using 64-bit system, and there's a lot of new improvements, a lot of new parts, and also a lot of other awesomeness that has been added to Kerbal Space Program. And today we're going to briefly investigate some of the cooler additions to this game, starting of course with the parts. So first and foremost, we have a new cockpit. This is actually a Mark 1 cockpit that is absolutely gorgeous, and it has a really awesome view from the inside, which I'll show you once I start this. We also have a new fuel tank that is only 0.65 in radius, which allows us to create some really awesome engines, which we're going to do for this particular airplane we're going to be making. So let's actually just use a normal Mark 1 fuel tank, strapped some on right here, and we're going to be making a new really tiny airplane. Unfortunately, there are no new wings, so we're just going to use wings that we already have available. Let's actually just use these two airplane fins because, first of all, they say Kerbal Space Program on them, and also because I've never actually used these before. These are not new, however, they've been here for a while. And so let's actually investigate some of the new parts. So first and foremost, there's quite a lot of new engines that have been added, and specifically we're talking about turbojet engines. So there is two that are right here. One of them is called Juno Basic Engine, and it's a really tiny one. This is what you would strap onto that 0.65 meter tank, and I'm going to show you what it looks like. So here I'm going to put two tanks here and maybe two more on top of them. So we're going to be making this kind of a private jet plane sort of thing. And let's put on these beautiful new engines. So this is what it looks like. They're really small, and they're not particularly super powerful. They only have just a little bit of thrust, and they're only effective or really effective in the lower atmosphere. So their maximum thrust is at Mach 1.3, so you can possibly make a jet with this, like a smaller airplane jet. But unfortunately, this will not be really efficient for SSTOs or anything of that nature. So really, a lot of the new additions are mostly for making airplanes. And we also got a few engines that have been reworked. So this right here, so-called Weasley turbofan engine, this is what I think used to be a normal basic jet engine. So now it's called Weasley, and it looks a little bit different. Kind of looks more like an engine for 747 actually. And unfortunately now our maximum thrust is once again stationary, so it's I think they reworked it, making it a little bit less powerful and a little bit less useful, because the maximum thrust of 120 kilonewtons is at Mach 0. The so-called ramjet engine is now a lot bigger. It looks like kind of like this, and it's now called Whiplash, or maybe it was known as Whiplash before, I don't remember. And so the maximum thrust is at Mach 3, so this hasn't really changed. It's just the other basic jet engine became a little bit, I think, a little bit less useful. Now we also have a new engine, so there's two new jet engines. One is called Juno, which is the tiny one right here, and one is called Panther. This is an afterburning turbofan, as it's known. And the cool thing about this engine is that it has this, another mode called afterburning. So this is when it starts using a lot more fuel, and in afterburning mode it's a lot more efficient at Mach 2.5, meaning that with this you can possibly make a somewhat efficient SSTO, but not really as efficient as what you could do with the Rapier engine. So Rapiers are still basically the go-to for SSTOs because of their ridiculously high efficiency at Mach of, what is it again, 3.7 I think. And lastly, there's a huge engine that's been introduced, and it's called Goliath. Now look at the size of this baby. Look at the size of that baby. We're gonna make a completely different airplane out of it actually. Or I could maybe strap it on right here. Oh, this is gorgeous. Look, okay, maybe a little bit sideways. So we're gonna try to use that at some point, because this is also really cool. And this also looks like a standard sort of 747, or even something that's bigger than 747 engine that you would use under the wing. And it even has like a wing attachment right here. Now, unfortunately, its maximum thrust, which is actually really large, but its maximum thrust is at Mach 0. But the good thing about this engine is that it's all in one. It has an air intake in it already. So despite it being super heavy at 4.5 tons, it's actually it's relatively efficient, and it's relatively powerful, and it has really high ISP, and it's basically what you would use if you were to make just a regular airplane to fly in the lower atmosphere. And speaking of air intake, there's actually an addition to these smaller engines, and this is the small circular intake that you can now use with 0.65 sized tanks. So I can actually now make really small engines. Oh no, I forgot to double them. Really small engines for my airplanes or smaller SSTOs. Alright, so we have 4 engines in the back now. It kind of does almost look like kind of a strange looking private jet because of the basically because of the cockpit and because of these smaller engines in the back. And then I'm actually going to put this turbofan on it just to test the afterburner mode. And there's actually a few more items that have been added. Specifically, there is now a mini ISRU, which is right here. It's called Convertitron 125. So the original ISRU, this is what allows you to make fuel by digging rocks, was about this size, and this was 4.25 ton. This one is only 1.25, and it's a lot smaller, meaning that you can now construct a self-refuelable spacecraft that are much smaller in size. But the only difference is that this here doesn't overheat and can operate indefinitely. This, however, does overheat, and you do need to either attach heat sinks, which are, where are they? They're somewhere over here, I think. There you go, thermal control systems, or you need to basically stop and take a break between your mining operations. So in other words, this is good for like a smaller craft that just wants to get a little bit of fuel from, let's just say, an asteroid or a smaller moon, and then just to take off again. But this is actually great news for those of us who like to construct crafts that are basically self-sufficient and travel far and wide, because this will allow you to make a really small and really efficient craft using a very tiny part that's attachable to almost anything. You just need to attach a drill after that so to make it function. And also the way mining works in general has been actually reworked a little bit, so now you actually have to try to manage your heat in order for you to increase efficiency. So even if you're using a regular Convertitron 250, which is the regular ISRU unit, you may want to actually try to find the optimal heat for it to function at its best capacity. And we also have this new part that's called Mark III Cargo Ramp. Look at this beauty. It opens and it closes, and you can essentially just put things inside of this cargo plane that you can now construct using, so here we go. Let's just make one really quickly. Put a cargo thingy here, close this, and put a cargo ramp behind it. And look at that. You can now store things inside your large airplanes and basically construct a very large cargo airplane or even cargo SSTO if you could figure out how to do it, because I think it sounds pretty difficult. And one thing I forgot to mention, there's also this now. We have a Mark I cabin that literally allows you to create this awesome private jet looking thingy that actually seats two. You can have two Kerbals on the inside. So you can literally just now create mini jets and also very large jets using those new engines. And I think one of the actually coolest part that has been added to 1.05 is this. This is called a Vector Liquid Fuel Engine. And this is just a regular engine with sort of like an average ISP and not really super powerful, even though it does have quite a lot of power. But the coolest part about this engine is its vector thrust. It has a ridiculously high vectoring. In other words, it can turn to the side by about 10 degrees, which is might not sound like it's important, but a lot of the previous problems when constructing things like the shuttle or replica of a shuttle was that we were unable to use a lot of vectoring. So an actual shuttle, space shuttle that is, American space shuttle, uses engines with really high vectoring, which allows it to essentially fly without losing its balance too much, because you can just vector your engines in a specific direction. Even though there's a weight distribution problem, you'll be able to actually take off normally. We didn't have these engines before. The highest we had was possibly something like 3 degrees maybe. I think there was an engine with, here we go, vectoring range of 3 degrees. Now we have 10 degrees, which is great news. If you're building a shuttle, and which I'll be doing really soon, you can now use these, place 3 of these on the back of your space shuttle, and you'll be able to control it really easily, and it should basically take off without much trouble. So this is really great news for those of us that like to construct shuttles. Otherwise, it's not a particularly useful engine. You may not actually want to use this in anything else except for space shuttles, because its ISP is relatively low in comparison to even things like Aerospike. Aerospike has actually higher ISP by about 100. It's about 30% more efficient, and it looks so much better now. Look at this new Aerospike model. This is great. Alright, so let's take this small baby for a spin. Let's see how it flies and how it does in the air. I may actually just want to place one of these because I don't need two. And, ooh, this is sideways. And then we're going to also try to make another airplane using a large engine. So basically a lot of the new items are to make better airplanes and to make basic jets and also just atmospheric jets. Of course, the only problem with that is that we don't really have anywhere to take them except for that one location, which I'll be flying to right now. Alright, so let's take this off and we're going to test it. Ooh, look at that. This is awesome. It even closes now. This is beautiful. I didn't even realize. And I think to change the mode, I need to... Here we go, toggle mode. Oh, that is so cool. That is so cool. No, that's not cool. That's not cool. That's not cool. Oh, boy. Oh, boy. Alright. Not going so well for us. Toggle mode. Engage the turbojet. Oh, Kerbal style. Alright, we survived. Everyone's fine. Perfect landing, right? Yep, both Bob Kerman and also Jebediah Kerman are very happy about this. So let's see what the inside looks like. So this is the little cabin. Oh, cool. It almost looks like we're flying, except we're not flying. So you can actually sit in front of your Kerbal and look at them. Ooh, this creates a lot of opportunities for putting Valentina right in front of us, so we can have a romantic dinner together. Alright, very good, very good. And this is what the actual cabin looks like for Jebediah Kerman. So it's a pretty cool IVA. A lot of the IVAs have been reworked. And I'm moving it right now, actually. And let's try to... There we go. We can roll our way to a nice position. Here we go. A lot of the IVAs have been reworked, and a lot of the other things have been reworked. Like, for example, if I go on EVA right now, I now have a nav ball during the EVA, which is actually a pretty good addition. I'm surprised we didn't have that before. So now you can actually tell directions and know exactly where you are. And look at how small this Mark 1 piece is. This is great. So definitely a lot of really cool additions. There's quite a lot of improvements, lots of new fixes, lots of new bug fixes, and the fact that this is now 64-bit allows you to run over 4 gigabytes of RAM, so the game will not crash as often, even though it still may crash, but it won't crash as often. And let's just roll this somewhere. This is so cool. And I think the fact that just a lot of new things look so much better now. It feels like even the actual Kerbal Space Center looks a little bit different, a little bit more professional almost. So there's definitely quite a lot of really cool new things. And a lot of the old mods actually still work fine. Like you can see I have Engineer running, even though it doesn't really know the engines yet, but it will run with older engines. And of course, MacJab will work fine. And I have procedural tanks in here. I have KW rocketry. So most of the older mods, including of course the Eve mod, which I have where the clouds are from, Scatter mod, and all of the other visual enhancement mods will work just fine. So you shouldn't have any trouble with anything else. And this is so cool. They even added little tidbits here. Push button to open door. Pull ring out 6 feet from jettison canopy. Rescue. This is so cool. I'm really loving the new parts. Alright, so we finally took off, and let's actually try to see how efficient these engines are. We're going to try to fly at a really high speed, and unfortunately, I don't know if it doesn't show the TWR, unfortunately, because these engines are not part of Space Engineer yet. But you know what? The craft controls really well. You can kind of see the gimbaling on this engine. It works pretty well. And I'm going to try to get the highest speed possible. Let's actually go a little bit higher in the altitude, and we're going to try to see how fast we can go. Alright, so let's level out this tiny little plane at around 10 kilometers, and we're going to just go straight ahead, see how fast, how high we can get with just these regular new turbojets. So we have the Juno basic engine, and we also have the Panther afterburner, and we're actually going to use the afterburner. Let's actually use that to get the highest possible speed that we can get. I already hear these guys shutting down. Yeah, I think they just, yeah, look at the thrust. It's very, very low. So even at altitude of 10 kilometers and higher than 300 meters per second speed, these engines are not very efficient. But the turbojet seems to work. I'm thinking that it's the turbojet that's going to actually take me somewhere. I'm going to shut it down for a second. Yeah, look at that. Speed has decreased dramatically. So it is definitely the turbojet that's propelling us right now. So these tiny engines are only efficient at the low atmosphere and at low speeds as well. But turbojet should be actually most efficient at the Mach of, I think it was Mach 2.5, which means that we can probably get to speeds of about 800 meters per second, which is what I'm going to try to do right now. And here you go. It actually peaked at around 650 meters per second. And I am thinking that it will now start dropping dramatically. Yeah, so I think what you may be able to, if you're just using these Panthers with afterburning, you may be able to take it to about 800 meters per second, I think, ish. So a little bit less than what a ramjet can do. And definitely about half of what Rapier can do, which I demonstrated in a previous video. So these engines are sort of more for, I think, personally, I would only use them for looks, and because of the fact that they have this new feature called afterburning, but I wouldn't really use them for anything else. All right, let's just take us down, and let's try the other engine. Let's actually look at the huge, mega-sized air-breathing engine that we also got as well. And here we go. I used the Mark II cockpit, the Mark II liquid fuel fuselage here to attach these awesome, huge Goliath turbofan engines to it. And we also have these two babies called Vector liquid fuel engines, which this is a new addition as well that allows us to vector something like, what is it, 10 degrees? I think it's 10 degrees. So we're going to test both of these. First, we're going to launch the Goliath engines, try to get as much speed as we can. And after this, we're going to use these two engines as our stage 2 to see how much we can vector around, how much we can change direction. So let's start these. And look at that. They're spinning and it looks absolutely beautiful, almost mesmerizing. Look at the middle there. Oh, do not die, do not die. Oh, no. Weight distribution problem again. No, that's not good. Well, let's see if we can actually just take off anyway. It's working. It's working fine. It's flying. Even though my wings kind of look a little bit detached. I think there's definitely, it's a little bit too butt heavy. So this is why it's leaning toward that direction, which gives me an opportunity to try my vectoring engines. So let's actually see how well they work. We're going to enable them in a second. And oh, look at that. Look how awesome they are. That is so cool. Okay, I ran out of fuel. But that was really, really awesome. They actually are ridiculously powerful, and they also happen to have... Can I actually not die? Maybe I can survive this. Can I actually survive this? So let's find out. No, probably not. So yeah, those vectoring engines are very powerful, very, very efficient, and very mobile. Definitely will allow you to essentially change directions and also launch your shuttles very effectively. So what I'm going to try to do is show you the last feature I wanted to show you, which is probably the best addition to the game. Of course, there are a lot of parts that have been added, but there's also another addition, which I'm going to show you in a second. Okay, let's see if I can actually even make it there. Probably not. Vector, 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 vector. This is why they're for. Look how awesome they are. This is beautiful. I'm loving these. All right, and the other last addition I was going to show you is that now you can actually land in the water. Yes, that's right. You heard me right. You can land in the water. They've added a lot of water effects. Landing on the water is now possible because water is essentially has its own unique physics now. And that includes density. So density of water is something like 1, which is realistic in terms of what it is on Earth. At least on all of the main planets, and I believe it's 1.5. In other words, it's more dense if you go to Eve. So in other words, water is more dense on Eve, or liquid is more dense on the Eve compared to Kerbin. So we're gonna try to land this here. I'm just going to basically float down to the bottom, and let's see if we can actually land this safely. So let's just watch our altitude here, very gently gliding down to the bottom of the sea. Now look at how awesome these gimbal. This is amazing. I'm definitely going to be making a lot of spacecraft using these simply because gimbaling is something we've been missing out on. So not only shuttles, but any kind of a craft that is not really balanced in terms of weight would actually be able to use this really well. Oh, excellent. Look at that. We've landed. Well, partially. I mean, you know what they say, right? If you can walk away from a landing, it's very successful. We're gonna try to float back to Kerbal Space Center using our capsule. So great. So now things float. You can definitely make ships. You can make barges to land on, SpaceX style. So basically, you can construct a barge and then try to land your spacecraft on it. And you can construct other floating devices. So absolutely amazing new features. This is a completely new game. It has been reworked from scratch. and I'm really happy where it's at. Anyway, this is basically it in a nutshell. Hopefully you enjoyed this kind of a review slash review, because I've done so many of these for this game, and I'm definitely going to be doing more with these new features in the future. Thank you guys for watching, and game you later, and bye bye.